Have you ever just felt like you're wired differently? While everyone else is getting swept up in the crowd, you're off on your own path, focused on your own thing. Well, turns out there's some really fascinating psychology behind that feeling of not quite fitting in. So let's get into it and explore what that's all about.
It really all boils down to this one simple question. Why are some of us absolutely compelled to be in the stands cheering for a team, while others feel this deep internal pull to be on the field, building their own game? Well, the answer has everything to do with how our brains are wired for reward.
So the key concept here is something called vicarious emotion. It's that huge rush you get when your team scores a point or your favorite singer wins an award. It's a really powerful social glue, It helps people bond and feel like they belong. But here's the thing. For some minds, that pathway just isn't as strong. They're just not wired to get their satisfaction from someone else's victory.
And that brings us to our first big idea. This isn't about being cold or antisocial, not at all. It's about having what we call a self-determined focus. It all comes down to where your sense of progress and accomplishment actually comes from, and that directly changes how you feel you fit in or don't.
Okay, this slide breaks down that dopamine hit perfectly. The cheerleader brain gets that reward, that rush, from group success. The big spectacle of an external win. But the builder brain, it gets its dopamine from internal progress. It's that quiet satisfaction of moving your own projects and goals forward. And look, one isn't better than the other. They're just fundamentally different reward systems. This difference is often the real reason you might feel out of place in big celebratory crowds.
So the crucial point here is this. Your sense of worth isn't tied to being part of the crowd. In psychology, they call this having low external validation needs. Basically, you don't need the group's applause to feel secure because that security, you generate it yourself from the inside.
All right, next up, let's look at how this builder mindset leads to some common behaviors that honestly get misunderstood all the time. Behaviors that can make someone feel like a total outsider. It all starts with how this type of mind processes the world, which is often alone.
So take this simple habit, right? Preferring to walk alone. From the outside, it can make someone look standoffish or like they're trying to avoid people. But what's really happening inside their head is something else entirely.
This quote absolutely nails it. Solitude isn't about escaping other people. It's about creating mental space. For this kind of mind, walking alone actually activates the brain's creative and problem-solving networks. It lets you think deeper and clearer without all the distractions. It's a tool for focus, not a rejection of humanity.
And this connects right into overthinking. But we really need to reframe that word. It's not about anxiety, it's about something called cognitive complexity. It means your brain's default mode is to just gather more information, to see all the connections and consequences that aren't obvious at first glance. It's a trait that can definitely make you feel out of step with people who make quicker, more surface-level decisions.
See, it's actually a structured, logical process. It's not some endless loop of worry. It's a deep analysis that's designed to find the absolute best outcome. So it looks like indecisiveness to an outsider is really a sign of a mind that just refuses to take shortcuts. And yeah, that can feel pretty isolating in a world that so often values speed over depth.
Now, this need for depth doesn't just apply to solving problems. It fundamentally shapes how you prefer to communicate, which brings us right to our third section.
If you've ever felt completely exhausted by small talk, you get this. For a brain that's always seeking new, complex information, those surface-level chats can feel like running on a treadmill. You're using a lot of energy, but you're not going anywhere. This is exactly why so many social gatherings, which kind of thrive on small talk, can feel like a place you just don't belong.
Now, pay close attention to this, because it shows that the issue isn't a lack of social skills, it's a filtering system for quality. This person can go from being the silent observer in the corner to the most engaged person in the room the second the conversation shifts to something with real substance.
So let's look at how this all plays out in our modern world, especially with social video. Let's talk about that quiet confidence that comes from not needing to perform for an audience just to feel validated.
This whole thing is powered by a trait with a kind of fancy name, an internal locus of evaluation. But it's really a simple idea. It just means you're your own judge. You measure your success, your worth, and your happiness against your own internal scoreboard, not by the number of likes, comments, or followers you can rack up.
This mindset leads to a really powerful choice. It's the decision to prioritize your own mental peace over the constant pressure of public performance. You consciously opt out of the whole social validation game because you know the prize, that external approval, isn't actually something you need to feel whole. And honestly, this is a massive act of self-preservation. By staying low-key, you're shielding yourself from what psychologists call social comparison theory, that endless toxic cycle of measuring your real, messy life against someone else's perfectly curated highlight reel. It's a quiet superpower for your mental health in a world that pressures everyone to fit into the same online mold.
So, what does this all add up to in the end? Let's tie it all together and reframe these so-called outsider traits not as weaknesses, but as some pretty profound strengths.
When you look at it this way, the whole picture becomes so much clearer. That need for solitude that can make you feel disconnected, that's actually the source of your deep thinking. Disliking small talk isn't being antisocial. It's just a desire for meaningful connection. And not needing to fit in, that becomes this powerful form of self-validation and emotional security. You're not weird, you're efficient.
This quote just gets right to the heart of it all, that self-focus is a protective mechanism. You instinctively guard your time and your mental energy because you understand, on a really deep level, that investing it all in someone else's game won't help you win your own.
So if any of this sounds like you, just remember this. While a lot of the world is distracted, watching and cheering from the sidelines, your focus is your greatest asset. So the real question is, what are you going to build with it?